Hey, it's Ethan Skolnick for 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and this is the latest Take 5. So the Jimmy Butler saga, which has now gone on for a couple of weeks in the national media, has taken a turn this morning. There's backpedaling going on, and what we've been saying all along is that the national media has not been considering the Heat's perspective on this. They've been giving you 2 of the 3 sides of the story. We've been trying to give you the third part, whether it's here on the YouTube channel or on the podcast 5 on the Floor, or on our Discord server, which we recommend you subscribe to, which is called Off the Floor. We've been trying to tell you what the Heat would actually be willing to do, but nobody at ESPN or other national outlets wants to acknowledge that. They don't seem to have a lot of sources inside the Heat organization, so they simply guess. And so I'm going to go to the beginning of this and try to explain why this has been so frustrating to cover. Because essentially, everybody's just come along to where we were weeks ago and what we've been telling you all along. And not just us, but also, of course, Barry Jackson from the Miami Herald has been aligned with our reporting. Let's start here. Shams at ESPN, who I do respect, and all of these reporters that I'm talking about, I respect, okay? So this seems to be a uniquely Miami Heat situation, or else there just wasn't anything to cover over the past couple of weeks, which I think, in the case of ESPN, plays into it, because the day that all of this broke, there was no Laker game, and the NFL was not playing, and so they decided to turn their attention, an entire news cycle, to Jimmy Butler, and they can't seem to let it go now. Okay, Shams' initial report, if you recall, said that the Miami Heat were open to listening to offers. Well, that's true. But the way that it was portrayed beyond that, and if you look at the chyron that ESPN put up on the board and everything along those lines, was that they were shopping him. They were never shopping him. They're open to listening to offers. We reported that. They're open to listening to offers on just about everybody and have been over the years. That's what you do as an organization. You have to be open to listening to offers to see if you can improve your team. But again, this all became a war between Shams and Jimmy's agent about where Jimmy would want to go or what was disclosed about where Jimmy would want to go. And we've said repeatedly that that really doesn't matter. I mean, it matters in the sense of maybe Jimmy re-signing with a certain team, so maybe they'd be more willing to give up more assets if they were even inclined to give him an extension. But it's already been made clear that Jimmy doesn't want to really sign an extension with anybody. So it doesn't really matter where Jimmy wants to go. He's not currently a free agent. He would be a free agent at the end of the season if he opted out, but he's probably going to find a limited market because there aren't a lot of teams with cap space. In which case, if he was still with the Miami Heat at that time and opted out, he probably has to work with the Heat to at least execute a sign and trade. So their attitude has been all along, let's let this play out until the end of the season. We'll see what Jimmy does, and then we'll react to it. Now, we can argue with the strategy of that, and, again, many podcasts we've done on that, but that is where they've been at. Nothing has changed in that regard, okay? But Shams' reporting only accounted for what teams might be interested in him and what teams he might be interested in without getting into what the Heat would actually be interested in doing. Okay, so that then became a wildfire. And I'm actually going to look down at my notes here because I want to make sure I get this correctly. Bobby Marks, who is one of the best at this, okay, he's a former executive who knows the salary cap. He did a terrific video where he got into how few teams would actually be able to execute or be willing to execute this. Okay, but again, the way that this whole ordeal has been portrayed, Bobby's comments ended up kind of feeding into this idea that Jimmy was somehow imminently going to be traded, even though Bobby was saying that likely wasn't even the case, okay? And he said something in that video. He said, the Heat were in the driver's seat. Okay. We've tried to make that same point. Nobody's listened to us. And then, okay, today, there was another report that was aggregated where he said there was a growing belief from executives around the league that the Heat were not going to trade Jimmy Butler. I mean, this isn't a growing belief unless these executives are just slow, okay? They've never been looking to trade Jimmy Butler. Again, they've never been shopping Jimmy Butler. They're open to listening to offers. And I can tell you, at this very moment, 12:58, okay, on Monday afternoon, I'm getting ready to go down to the Heat game here for this evening. The Heat have still not received an offer. So they've been open into listening to something that actually hasn't come in. Okay. Then there's these 2 other things today. Mark Stein says, and again, I greatly revere Mark Stein. He's been terrific at this for a very long time. He used to be at ESPN. He's not anymore. Mark says there's scant evidence, okay, that the Heat would acquire Beal. Okay, it's nice for somebody to comment finally on what the Heat would actually do. But again, there's never been any evidence that the Heat would acquire Beal. We reported that right away. They could have acquired him last year. They didn't want to because he wouldn't waive his no-trade clause and because of the size of the contract. The contract hasn't gotten smaller. His play has gotten worse. They have Tyler Hero now, who does a lot of the same things that Beal does, and now he does them better. They're not interested in Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal would have to be moved to a third team in which he would first have to waive his no-trade clause, which he is not guaranteed that he would do to go to some of these teams. We believe he probably would to the Heat, but is he going to waive it to go to, say, Brooklyn or something along those lines? And then said team would need to want the same contract that the Heat don't want. Scant evidence. I mean, it's just common sense. And we reported that the Heat are not interested in Beal. Okay? And then there was this. Legion Hoops aggregated something from some site, I don't even know where it's from, that said, and the aggregation in the tweet was the Heat are struggling to find a trade partner. So the path is clear for Butler to remain with the Heat through the trade deadline. Struggling to find a trade partner. They're not looking for a trade partner. Apparently, trade partners aren't looking for them because they haven't received an offer. Struggling to find a trade partner implies that the Heat are trying to trade him and can't. That's not the case. Again, open to listening to offers. We've talked about how at the end of the year, not only could he be moved in a sign and trade, he could opt in also. Okay, that's another possibility here. He could opt in if he doesn't see a market. But additionally, the Heat also could make him an offer for, say, 3 years and maybe the money, slightly more than the money that Jimmy wants for 2, and see if he takes it. I know that the Heat would be open to that possibility. So they're not desperate to trade him now. They know they have options at the end of the year and a bunch of different routes that this could go. And the path is clear to keeping him past the trade deadline. What? Path was always clear. The path wasn't blocked. It's been the most likely option all along. I have not said that he will not get traded. There is a chance that he could get blown away by some kind of an offer. I'm just looking at this at the percentages right now, and I'm saying the likelihood of that, considering teams that would be interested in him, that actually had the assets that would entice the Heat. I mean, Jonathan Kuminga on a contract that you need to extend right away, that's not really an attractive asset. The only team that I can see that has attractive assets that the Heat might actually want might be Houston, but Houston doesn't seem inclined to move anybody. So anyway, this is not to disparage the particular reporters, okay? They're following a story that really wasn't a new story. We've been talking about this story since Pat made his comments about Jimmy, which is way back in the spring when the season ended. Nothing's really changed. That's what we've been trying to tell you. So when all these reporters are saying that things have changed or implying that there's some different circumstance than there was a week ago, the circumstance a week ago was really no different than the circumstance was 3 months ago. They're just late to the party and they needed a story. And look, LeBron's going to do something soon that will get ESPN off of this and they won't care anymore. Have a good day.